Okay, everybody. So, this is Reverend Jodi Suson, and we are live here. We're actually trying to go live on Instagram as well. So, send a few grace cards so that we can multi stream the way I multi stack modalities. There you go. Um, so today we are going to talk about what difference does it really make to put natural health at the core of your life and make like really who cares? Well, okay, you should care. Why? Because it will make a huge difference in how you feel. And today um, we have Dr. Robert Verkerk. He is the founder of the Alliance for Natural Health, executive and scientific director for the Alliance of Natural Health, both international and for the United States of America. He is a multidisciplinary scientist, researcher, educator, regulatory expert, and campaigner with nearly 40 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. His academia, he has academia background. He's a consultant. Um, I'm actually going to pause here because his accolades are huge. Like they're beyond. I could be reading literally all day long, which is amazing. But what's even more amazing, which is why I want to bring him on here, is I want you to hear not all the credentials. I want you to hear his why. Why does he do what he does? And then we're going to tell you why it's so important and how you can too. All right. So, Dr. Rob, how are you?
Reverend Jodi, what a pleasure it is to be with you today. And thank you for the introduction. So, yeah, why? Why do I do what I do? Well, like many of us, we have a calling. And when we really resonate in life, we resonate because we are true to that calling. And I, I, I basically, from a very, very young age, I was inspired by nature. I was born in Africa. I was surrounded by jungles as a kid, and
Wow.
in Kenya, I could not wait to get to the safari parks to understand more about these remarkable animals. I couldn't get my head around the fact that my grandparents' generation, their friends were white hunters that would go out and shoot these animals. And I
Right?
thought, these things are so beautiful. In fact, a friend of my grandmother's was famous for his picture of a leopard basically coming down to the ground was on a lot of postcards in the 1960s and 70s in Kenya. And basically, what he did is these guys were all hunting, but then they turned to cameras, and he would lie on the ground, wait for these animals to attack him, take a photograph, then shoot them and kill them for the
Mm.
sake of money. So things like that just really made me feel that nature needed to be understood better and to be protected better. Um, and um, and
There's a part in my book where I talk about hunters. I don't know if you got to that part yet, but where we have people on social media and they go hunting, and some of them are just doing it for fun and some of them are doing it for food. And but posting your catch,
yeah, yeah,
just not okay.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
Mhm.
We are hunters. Even if we're farmers, we're hunters. We hunt in different ways, but it's to do with respect and it's to do with dignity and the principle of um, consuming animals. I'm a big fan in terms of the work that we do in agriculture of keeping livestock in agriculture. And I've been involved in big debates on veganism, and I will tell you that I always come in favor of high welfare standards and livestock in agro ecosystems, mainly because once you understand the miracle of animal poop, you
Right?
remember, yeah, if you take that out of the equation, it's pretty damn difficult to create very healthy soils. And every aspect of a living system is all about how it's shared and how it's, if we look at how a rainforest, I spent many years, trying to apply principles that we learned from rainforests into agricultural systems. And
Mhm.
these, when we look at a rainforest, we see exquisite beauty, we see balance, but there's also a whole bunch of guys eating each other and pooping on each other and sharing nutrients and all the rest of it. So as humans, what we do is we've developed this thing called an economic system that attempts to help us understand how we distribute resources. But of course, because we put the wrong price tag on so many of these natural resources, we get it wrong over and over and over again. So, a healthy soil, healthy, clean water, healthy, clean air, these are some of the most valuable sunlight. These are some of the most valuable resources. And yet we don't value them at all. In fact, people are now about to spend billions trying to reflect solar energy out to space with these huge geoengineering projects because they're worried about climate change. But that's like turning off the energy that feeds our planet.
I know.
All of the energy, most of the energy comes from the sun. So these are questions that have fascinated me all my life, and I've been a scientist at Imperial College London for 10 years. I did my master's and PhD there. I'm originally trained as an ecologist, but I've worked in environmental groups, I've worked in health groups, and I set up in 2002 Alliance for Natural Health as an alliance of doctors and scientists and practitioners and citizens to basically put natural health in the driving seat of personal responsibility for health. And if we're going to do that, we need to educate, but we also need to change the regulatory and scientific frameworks that have created a big pharma monopoly, a big ag monopoly, a big food monopoly. Now we see big biotech, we see big tech. These are all huge corporate, monopolies or oligopolies that are often taking us off in a different direction. And particularly now we see this cusp of trying to determine whether humanity is better off by completely selling out on nature and going down a technology route into a transhuman, potentially
Yeah.
post-human environment. And so that doesn't resonate with us either,
Mm-mm.
Dr. Jodi. So we are basically now um, very, very, for 25 years, we've been advocating to put nature first, to really take from the wisdom of nature, to try and still use science to better understand the world around us, but to also recover from this manipulation of science. What we see,
Right. So let's talk about that, because there's science and then there's like, well, this is hilarious. Sorry. Thank you, Jesus. So there's science and then there's pseudoscience, right? And I
yeah,
will say that like, I'm NLP board certified, right? And so
yeah,
a lot of people say that's pseudoscience, or they'll say chiropractic is pseudoscience, but the truth of the matter is the pseudoscience is the stuff that they're making up about what's happening to our sun and what the cows do, and that's the pseudoscience, quite
yeah,
frankly. Let's
yeah.
just turn this around, shall we?
We live in a world in which information now is the currency of control and power. And so if you try and persuade enough people that what the dissenters are saying is pseudoscience, they are, more likely to believe that. And critical thinking, people's ability to engage the frontal cortex and really start rationalizing on their own, particularly as issues have become more complex. I mean, if we look at any big issue, how do we do human health care? How do we manage this environment that we're codependent on? How do we deal with the fact that there is a imbalance in how money and finance is distributed on the planet? How do we deal with, you know, over 8 billion people on the planet? These are big questions, and there are actually millions of potential answers to all of those questions. So what the people who want to control the narrative are trying to do is to control information. So they give you a particular view of that information. It's a bit like making. Do you remember when we were kids? We used to try and join the dots with numbers, and with many of the complex problems that we have today, none of us have all of the information. We all have pieces of the information, and these are like numbers on a picture. And if we each have different numbers, guess what? We all draw different pictures. And so the guys who say, well, we've got the picture that represents the truth, and you guys haven't, they just say, well, you're the guys involved in pseudoscience. And
Well,
so
it's interesting that you bring that up because so as a quantum energy healer, I work with two other amazing souls, right? Chris Fetchula and Rajai Kaldani. And one of the reasons, and not that I don't work on my own, I do, and they do, but one of the reasons that we work together is that we each have, and many times, only part of the equation for the healing that that person needs. And so when people can step into the fact that they are not all knowing, right? They are not. And God intended for us to all have pieces of the pie so that we could have the best apple pie, right? I mean, like that.
yeah.
And so, I remember like back in 2016 when I was training in health, and I was also finishing my MBA. And the doctor I was training with, who was also a shaman, always felt that he had to do all of it. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, and so what do you tell people? How do you explain to people that the importance, and it's really hugely important, of bringing in all the pieces of the puzzle and all the people that can play to help us reclaim sovereignty over our own health and reclaim the earth's sovereignty over her health?
Yeah, I think we need to bring in things that resonate with us, and intuition is one of the senses that we don't even value as a sense anymore, and yet it is one of the most complex senses that we have. We know that many other animals use it all the time. They are able to read energies through this intuitive, non-verbal, communication system that and we've lost sight of that. But however, we know when things resonate with us, when they're in the same vibration. If you look at the work happening in biophysics and quantum biology, we're beginning to understand that that's actually quite important. So we each need different things to help us basically get back into resonance so that we can become more resilient as beings. So this idea that there's a one size fits all, solution for any health problem. I mean, let's start from the pharmaceutical model where you basically name and tame diseases. You have to name it first, so you diagnose it, and then you look at a list of drugs, knowing full well that the disease that you're dealing with is not caused by a deficiency of that drug. It's caused by a dysfunction in the system. Yet you give that drug as if it's the body is deficient in it.
Right. And if you
This
believe
is,
what I believe, what's the root cause? But it's, what your emotions are that are oh, thank you. God bless you. You bought the book. Thank you. So like our emotions are driving these dysfunctions, And the chemicals from the pharmaceutical companies are are driving spiritual dysfunction.
Yeah.
And as I've been trained by, I think, some of the best, so the for those of you who are watching the replay on a non-video, I'm pointing upwards to God. That's who
Yeah.
trained me.
Yeah.
So, um and don't get me wrong, I had a few here on earth as well. But mostly my training came from God. But the thing is that it we cannot receive our spiritual gifts if our physical body and our spiritual body are disconnected. And
Mm.
when we are exposed to chemicals, any chemicals, right? Synthetic chemicals, and or we're specifically exposed to something like glyphosate. Glyphosate extracts minerals from our body and from our food supply and was used to decalcify pipes back in the day. So we then cannot connect to goodness. And connecting to goodness is connecting to God and connecting to each other. So that's been the plot or the approach to keep us disconnected from each other and from real health, according
Yeah.
to
Or,
him.
or we get thrown a curved ball in
Mhm,
order to help us to develop our souls in this life and start to find solutions,
mhm,
because I mean this is it's an extraordinary opportunity to have several decades on this beautiful blue planet to further one's spiritual development. I mean, human beings have been doing that for millennia, for centuries. As you know, if we look at how long spirituality has existed in one form or another, and yes, it's been taken in different directions by humans, and we get this, different types of religion, which is just a, if you like, a human artifact of that spiritual connection that we all have. And I mean, as a scientist, I had an experience when I was just 17 years old that
yes, that I was
helped.
waiting for you to tell
Yeah.
people. Please go
Well,
on.
that enabled me to realize that there is something going on that is outside the bounds of our current understanding of science. And in my own medical record is the fact that I have experienced a faith healing in which the form of my left knee is completely changed before and after a faith healing experience that I had when I was 70 years old. And I went along to this charismatic movement of the Church of England, of all things, as a boarding school boy. My parents were living the other side of the planet in Indonesia, and I saw that there was a talk going on with these faith healers, and I'd been on crutches for a year, but it actually never crossed my mind. In fact, it was probably because my belief in faith healing, in the mechanism, was such that I didn't think it applied to me.
Wow. Okay.
So it literally never crossed my mind that I might go there to experience a healing. But yet, because I was completely open, when the um, when the priest laid his hands on my head and started talking in tongues, and all of the congregation started breaking out into this really complex music, almost jazz-like harmonies that were heaven sent. I mean, truly.
Mhm.
And then I left my body and was able to observe the whole thing.
Oh, you did not tell
Yeah,
me. I
I
don't.
did
You
tell you
did
that.
tell me. I didn't remember,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you left your body. Yeah, I
I
love
left I
that.
left my body completely. So I knew the spirit and the body were two separate items from that moment.
Mhm.
And then bottom line is my leg. I walked out with this very spindly leg because I hadn't been able to use it for a year. I went for a run that night with a friend. We saw amazing cloud formations in the moon was bright, shining into this cloud, so we could see this cloud very, very clearly. And he said, "My God, have you seen that?" I said, "I see it. It's a lion." and that lion, um, he said, "What does it mean?" And I saw it instantly, having grown up in Africa. That lion means courage, and
Yeah.
it was a message, and it's one of the reasons that I spent my life taking on big corporations. I mean, I never ever lose sleep over taking on corporations or governments. If they're doing the wrong thing, we have to challenge them. That's what the soul journey is all about. You know, we are part of a mechanism that helps the pendulum swing back. You know, many people might think the world is a pretty crazy place. Well, isn't that an indication that we need to do something about it?
Do something different than what we're doing today, because if
Exactly.
you don't, it's a definition of insanity. I
Exactly.
just have to say this because, like, they're coming in big time. So the lion, going back to what happened in your childhood, and then of course the healing, um, he's your spirit animal if you don't already know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
clearly,
Yeah.
like, full, like, um, you
Yeah.
know, and it's interesting, and I just feel compelled to share this, and we'll go right back to the mission, sorry. But, I work with some people, you know, in other countries, and this gentleman, his nephew, who's only 2 days old, couldn't come out of the hospital, was, like, on its deathbed. And, my friend Chris and I, uh, did healing for this 2-day-old child.
Right.
Um, and he checked out 3 hours ago to come home.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Okay. That was the choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's, you know, I say this because you shared, and thank you, because I really wanted people to hear your story about how you had this spontaneous remission.
I've never shared it on a podcast, by the way, Reverend Jodi. This is the first time.
Well, thank you.
I
This
was
was really
drawn to it because of the work that you're doing. I was drawn to share it. I normally don't.
Thank you. Because people need to know. People need to know this about you, that it happened, what, 40 plus years ago? And then
Yeah.
it happened for this child last night. I
Amazing.
want people to know that they have a choice in the matter. And by you sharing your story, and then me sharing what we just did last night, and the other people we help all the time,
Mm.
they have a choice in the matter. They can use natural health, and they want, I mean, and like, I don't typically do this, but I mean, really, people, you know, instead of buying the Starbucks coffee, take the money for the week and send it to the Alliance for Natural Health, because
Mm.
they're protecting your rights to real food, real air, you know, real water. You really don't want Franken food. You don't want, you know, genetically made pork or salmon. You want the bees protected, because without bees, you know, our planet is going to be in peril. And then, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
This is the cusp at which we live now, where people are so hell bent. You know, human beings are incredibly clever tool makers. That's why
Mm.
technology has become as advanced as it has, and we're only just beginning. If you imagine where human beings, that's why people like Nick Bostrom, you know, with his simulation hypothesis, saying, look, every advanced civilization, humans included, will get to a point in which the development of simulation models on computers will be so sophisticated that it will be impossible to distinguish reality from virtual reality. And
That
therefore he's posing the question that we could be in a simulation now, because you wouldn't be able to separate, you know, the virtual reality from the true reality.
so
And
he's saying we are in this simulation now. So I think that we're on the cusp of it. I think you're right.
so let's say, where are we going to be in 1,000 years? If you look at the speed of AI development, where are we going to be? And that's why when we decide that we're going to just give our kids VR virtual reality goggles for Christmas,
Oh,
we're going to allow our babies to grow up with iPads, in their cots. We're going to feel that if we go and have a dinner party, it's okay for the kids to be stuck on their digital devices so they
Well,
don't
explain to
engage.
people why that's not okay.
Yeah. So,
Most people, look, I have a large community that understands, and I want to reach the community that doesn't understand. Why is this not okay? Why don't we want to attach stroll the child with an iPad in the baby carriage?
because what we know about, say, when we were young, the general view from childhood psychology was that the first 7 years were the key formative years. The more that people have researched this, the more we realize that it is the first 1,000 days, the first 3 years or so, where the programming, we come in as the physical part of our being is a pretty blank slate, where we have some data that's uploaded through, genetically and epigenetically, from our parents. But basically, we are a programmable slate that it comes into a given environment, so that we can, and we know this from twin studies. You separate kids even at a young age, they grow up very, very differently. Their epigenetic patterns of expression are very different. So that means every single piece of information, all the energy, the intention, the resonance that child experiences, the influences, so if we imagine, instead of having people and animals in nature, we have shoot 'em up games, or games with synthetic characters and personalities that people are playing with, where all of the time that is spent doing that is time in which the development of human communication is massively interrupted, because kids don't learn about the subtleties of non-verbal communication, the things that allow us to become more intuitive with time, that allow us to become true social beings. All of these systems are broken apart, and of course, if that child then doesn't experience love, because it's got technology that's replacing that parental or familial bond, we potentially destroy that child's life. I mean, really, if we get that programming wrong in that first 3 years. So when you look at the agenda that Secretary Kennedy has now in the US with the Maha agenda, and we've just been studying his first major report. It's very interesting. It's the first time ever a government I've seen has dealt with some of those issues, including screen time and ultra processed foods and lack of physical activity. However, I would also say, inevitably, it's only got a small range of issues that it's considering. The problem we have, that we've created through what we call culture, where central to the problem is one of disconnection. As we disconnect from each other and from the values that we learn that are important, have you seen the way as we de-spiritualize and disconnect people from each other and from nature, the ability for people to have a value system that respects nature, each other, that really understands what human dignity is about and respect is about. And you see this polarization that develops on social media, where complete strangers are at each other's necks, and they've never met each other. They've never broken bread together and sat across a table. And let's think about, even though we may have this difference of opinion, let's think about all the things that we agree on. In the middle of COVID, we actually set up with a top communication and behavioral scientist a workshop called communication magic, because we were so astonished with how polarized society was. And it seemed that the mainstream narrative's job was to break down communication, to instill a sense of hatred for each
Oh,
other.
all day, all day. So, okay, I've got like 5 sets of notes here that okay, I just just need to tell you. Okay. So, okay, first of all, these video games, right? And you say these characters die and then they pop back up again. And people don't even realize that they're imprinting on their children that life is not as fragile as it really is, right? And so then someone finds a gun in the house, they go out and they shoot someone, and they're thwarted and surprised that the person they shot did not get back up, right? Like, and they were doing that in my generation too with Roadrunner. Remember him? He was dead.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Okay, got that. The other part about destroying a kid's life. So, like, I'm taking notes while you speak. I'm just telling you now. Okay. Listening to you. So destroying a kid's life with this iPad in the cart or sitting, whatever in the cradle. Um, Let me just give a couple bullet points about that destruction.
Please.
Number one, the blue light is so bad for the human DNA. Number two, the frequency that's coming out of that device is clumping the red blood cells.
Yep.
Now, because of an iPad is about the same size as the baby, right? You're not clumping the red blood cells. I have a safe case on my phone. You're not clumping the red blood cells right by the head, which I'm not doing now because mine's protected. You're clumping the red blood cells by the entire body. Okay, so that's
a much more vulnerable body as well.
Yeah. Those cells, you're actually changing the DNA. And when you listen to Dr. Patrick Porter of BrainTap, I mean, we can change our DNA in 40, I think he said 40 seconds, just with our thoughts alone.
Correct.
And I know that a negative frequency will cause agitation, anxiety, and all those things. And do you really want this for your child? Do you want anxiety and agitation, or do you want peace, love, happiness, and joy? Right?
Yep.
So those are the questions that need to be asked. And then the other thing that you said was how we're disconnected from each other. And, because we have several generations now that have grown up with technology, or, there was latchkey children and now we have technology children. They don't understand consequences for their actions. And so they just go about their day. They do these things without any consciousness, any awareness. And that's the pandemic. I mean, the lack of consciousness. So
it's part of the plan. Some would argue it's part of the plan. If you read Klaus Schwab's 2017 book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, it was all laid out for us by the World Economic Forum, and 23 new technologies, many of them are at a much more advanced stage now than they were. That includes implantable cell phones, mobile devices. I've met a guy who's actually one of the physicists working on those implants. And if you approach a 15-year-old and say, hey, kiddo, what do you feel about not having ever losing your cell phone? It could just be in the side of your head or on your shoulder, and you'd have continuous communication all the time with it. You just have to say, hey, call, Joe, and it'll call for you. And then it can be linked to your brain, and it can read your brain, and you won't even have to talk, and you'll just be, and a lot of kids now at a stage when they see what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, and they go, wow, this is the future. This is what we've been hearing about with science, fiction for years. This is where we need to go, and driverless cars are already available. People can be picked up from a hotel and taken to a restaurant in a driverless car in LA now, no trouble. And so they're adjusting to this world in which the blurring between the natural and the artificial, between natural biology and the synthetic, is becoming so opaque that you can't barely tell the difference. And in fact, you could argue I mean, this is a major concern of mine over the last 5 years. Since COVID came along, we were not given an opportunity as a society to say, are you okay about, instead of using a conventional vaccine where you take part of an organism and you introduce it in an inactivated state to the human body so that it produces antibodies or T cells to it and your immune system learns how to respond to it. Instead of doing that, what we'll do is we'll put the instructions into your body to turn your body into the pharmaceutical factory.
Right.
And
Right.
then we'll
That's
get
what
your body to produce this spike protein that, by the way, is a patented protein. So we'll get your body to produce a patented protein, not even of a naturally occurring virus, but one that was produced in a lab. Are you okay with that? And by the way, we're going to, approach 90% of the adult population. And so there was never any discussion over that. There is no discussion right now over the introduction of what I call GMO version 2, which is the new genomic technologies like CRISPR and the gene editing that's going on. There's a massive push around the world, in the US and in Europe, to introduce into the food supply and into the drug supply foods and medicines that
they're
are
doing it now.
genetically altered. And
they're doing it now. They're growing our lettuce that way.
But they want to do it without telling us. When I talked about the fact that this is...
Yeah, but what else is new? I mean, honestly, back in the 1990s, that's why one of the reasons I got so sick was because I'm as empathic as they come, right?
Yeah.
And I'm eating these GMO foods and I'm having these emotional outbursts for like no good reason while I'm working.
Yeah.
Like this, so hence the misdiagnosis. But doing things under the radar has always been the way that they do things. They are not, and that's why each day, and I invite everyone who's watching or listening to this in the future, I pray for truth and transparency. So if you pray for truth and transparency every single day, we'll put the resonance into the universe that we'll start receiving truth and transparency, and they'll stop poisoning us against our consent. Just
exactly.
saying. Sorry.
Exactly. No, that is spot on. As the Maha Commission's first report says, if you look really at the guts of it, what they're trying to do, pretty cleverly, really, is to say we want transparency and we want to get rid of conflicts of interest. Nearly all the strategies that they're trying to employ to deal with problems in the food supply, problems in healthcare, are linked to a lack of transparency and these revolving doors that have existed between government agencies and big corporations. And they're saying enough is enough. We're not going to have that anymore. We want things to be transparent. Doesn't mean we're going to be tomorrow banning, say, weight loss jabs. But if you read their report, you'll see that GLP-1 receptor agonists are in there as one of the problem groups of drug that are involved in overprescription. Because if you look at this is the playbook that has been used over and over again. You pay for some drug trials that give you positive results. You don't publicize your negative results, so you already have a skewed view because of the way it's been funded, the way in which the experiments are being conducted, and you're leaving out the bad bits, and then you turn that over to a massive global PR system, including now a social media system. So you get champions everywhere, people who've had great difficulty losing weight, who want a simple, quick fix. And you get those people singing the praises of weight loss jabs.
Well, I mean, it's similar to how people wanted a quick fix for a virus that was created in the lab. Everybody doesn't understand. You actually have an immune system and you have a signal that comes from the brain to the rest of the body, and you need to activate those things.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
So what I've just published on Friday a big article on GLP-1 receptor agonists, and a big part of that is just putting the information that is already sitting on government websites, on regulatory websites, about all the problems that are just not being communicated to the public. And I'm pretty confident to say in 10 years' time, we'll look back at this group of compounds, semaglutide and the rest of them, as having not been the magic bullet that they were professed to be when they really got into big circulation around about a year ago. So because we're seeing so many problems developing, just in the same way as we're still there are thousands of physicians and health practitioners around the world mopping up the problems with COVID-19 vaccines that have been, now completely hidden in the haze of long COVID, so that people say, well, there's no separation between the symptoms of long COVID, where you develop long-term symptoms from exposure to SARS-CoV-2, from someone who has a problem because their body is still producing spike protein. And we've now got papers that are showing that 700 plus days after your last injection, your body could, and it's not everyone by any means, but it is some people, continue to produce the spike protein, and the spike protein is cytotoxic. If we're going to have transparency, and this is really a fantastic development that Secretary Kennedy is pushing through, he wants to see this information in the public domain so that the right of informed choice and informed consent can be exercised, because it certainly wasn't exercised 5 years ago when
Do
these,
you,
or
do you
4
know the
years.
title of my first book?
No, I don't. Tell
Informed Choices.
me. Okay, there you go. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, we've been redeveloping a whole ethics framework, medical ethics framework for healthcare, because ethics is something that's been thrown to the wind, especially in the
Oh,
last few years.
big
Um,
time. And I'll say that, you know, the team that I work with, and I can't validate this yet. It will be validated later. But the team I work with on an energy basis, we can, with using a multimodal approach, help people unwind the damage done by these injections. Um, there are several people that we do it as a team, because that's hard work, right? I
yeah,
mean, and it takes a lot, and we actually go in and take a look at what's happening in the veins, what's happening in the heart. And if people are running, they're coming in midstream, we're taking a look energetically. Okay. And so,
yeah,
but there are people who can measure what we are doing. And then, of course, we'll send them to see a doctor that can do the physical measurement of that, of the impact of our work. But we know that we can do this. And so, for people who have walked that path, I don't want you to have fear. I want you to have hope. And because you actually on your own can change your own DNA, and
yeah.
you can self-heal, just like Dr. Rob self-healed when he was 17, right? And just like I
We do it every day. We literally do it every day. We all have cancer every day, and we do it all the time. And that is the most powerful healing. And we can be assisted in that journey from so many different things. But ultimately, we need to be in resonance with the treatment systems around us, which is why we can't have one system. We got to have a very wide range of systems. We need information out there so people can make choices that make sense to them. And we're now just not only looking at the placebo effect, but the super placebo effect. I mean, there are extraordinary things that happen when intention, positive intention, is received by the body. And the therapeutic relationship, that relationship that we have with a physician whom we trust, gives rise to a completely different response in the body compared with the, digitization of healthcare, in which we go online, we talk to a bot of some sort, we give
Yeah.
our problem, and then they decide what drug we need. That is not how we're going to resolve some of these energetic imbalances that are at the heart of many of the health problems we face.
So keep your pants on for this. So so I used to teach incubator programs because I have a very strong business background, and this is in Palatine, Illinois,
Yeah.
through the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. And the one girl, so they were all 12-year-olds, okay, so who don't have half the baggage that we have. And the one girl, this is probably going back, I want to say 6 years, she came up with one of those ideas where she, yeah, 12-year-old, right? And I'm looking at that going, doesn't feel good to me, but I can't knock it because I don't want to knock her creativity. But we have to, I did ask, like you have to look at the ethics around approaching health as a cookie cutter. And one of the things was it was a channel in the book, and I honestly I don't remember what page it was, but there was a part in the book I remember where Jesus came in and said that we got health all wrong, and that he basically said that we were not cookie cutter. You can't approach health as cookie cutter. And he was advocating for individual testing, and at the very least muscle testing, which is why my spiritual brother Rajai Kaldani and I taught that for free on YouTube for people to have access to, because if you can connect to goodness, connect to source, right? And for me, it's Jesus and and Mary Magdalene. So if we're connecting to that, and we can use our body as a pendulum at the bare minimum on a day-to-day basis and say, well, this supplement is for my highest good, and it's for my highest good right now, and I need 1 drop or 2 drops. Like, that's where people need to be empowered in their own health on a day-to-day basis. And then for the things that they cannot determine on their own and they need blood tests, then we can do that, right? But we need to have people be empowered every single day to do what they need to do.
That's the reason why millions of Americans and people around the world continue to use natural products of nature for healing, not because they think it's the only way of going. They use it because it works, and it works for them. They're much less bothered that an institution or a university hasn't done a specific clinical trial. If it works for them, they'll continue to use it. And if you look at the scale of the machine that goes out and says these things are pseudoscience, when in fact they're not. I mean, we've got a major action we're going to be submitting later this week, actually, to the FDA, which is basically taking all the nutrition disease claims that the government health authorities, particularly the NIH, has made. You would imagine that they hadn't made any nutrient disease claims, because guess what? Nutrient disease claims are illegal. They're banned because it was determined that the only people who could make nutrient disease claims would be drug companies. And of course, they've got no desire to put nutrients through a new drug application. So basically, they're pretty much, I mean, there's a handful of natural
products. When you say nutrient disease claims, what are you exactly, because I think I'm making an assumption, but what exactly do you mean by a nutrient disease claim?
Okay, so I might be saying that, say, coenzyme Q10 basically will reduce your risk of heart disease. And it may be because of the mechanism that it increases mitochondrial efficiency, and that might be the mechanism. But the fact is that people who have heart disease, and particularly if they're taking statins, that is burning up your natural CoQ10 reserves, and the situation that has arisen of late over the last few decades is that anyone who tries to communicate this truthful information to the public gets criminalized. You know, people have been put behind bars for saying that kind of stuff, because that's what the drug companies want. That's how they control information. So written into the FDA Modernization Act is a clause that was written by our general counsel, Jonathan E. Mord, nicknamed the FDA Dragon Slayer because he has more successful claims against the FDA than any other person in history. And he wrote this specifically after winning the Pearson-Shalala case back in 1999, that basically said if a health authority, a government agency, makes a claim about a natural product or an ingredient,
like cashews,
yeah,
nature's antidepressant, right?
exactly. So, but if the government have determined that it's that claim exists, then everyone should be able to use it. And of course, in practice, what they've said is no, you've got to go through the qualified health regime, which is an obstacle course that only very small numbers of people can afford. But written into this clause is that shouldn't be the case. If the government have said it, you should be able to take a product and you should be able to put that claim on that product and use it straight away. So that we're submitting a petition to the FDA reminding them about that clause. We've collated all hundreds of these claims and said, now if you want MAHA, and if you look at the various presidential executive orders, we believe that these should be able to be used immediately by anyone. There's no difference between a corporation putting that claim on a bottle and a private person communicating that to someone else. So that will open the doors to, it'll be the first time in history that a whole bunch of natural products will be able to be seen, if you like, on a level playing field with drugs, because the drug licensing system has been created to create a pay-to-play system that you pay for your drug license, and then you get to declare that a product is safe and effective, even if the science say that it's neither safe nor is it effective, but you still get to say it's safe and effective. And boy, did we see that during COVID.
Yeah, right.
You know, remdesivir.
And it's
COVID
humbling.
vaccines.
It's humbling. And when people find out that, I mean, you know, I know this doesn't relate, but it relates. Even in the natural health community, there are certain places that are putting on these major conferences, and they say, if you want to speak on our stage, you have to pay us. And I'm like, well, I've already paid the price, like with my life. So I will never pay somebody to speak.
Yeah.
And it's the same business model for Western medicine, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason I'm sharing this is because I want people to know this. Just because you're working with someone in natural health, check their ethics. Okay? Because they're not all created equal. And it's the same business model. And they're looking at the other business model going, I can do this over here. And it's not okay. One of a client that I had, I started working with over a year ago. She was working with a natural health practitioner and who had her own line of supplementation. And I don't have any desire to put anybody out, but I went into the energy of that bottle that she had in her hand, and it was filled with arsenic.
Wow.
Filled. And I have the gift to be able to tell you sometimes, not all the time, exactly what's in it outside of what's on that label. And so that's why we have to really know who we are entrusting our health with, and who our partners are, right? And the Alliance of Natural Health has been a trusted partner of mine for years.
Mhm. Thank you so much. I mean, look, I was part of a major US integrative medicine organization and big educator. I've been to the conferences for years. I've done education through them. And when COVID came, they got in behind the AMA, American Medical Association position. Everyone's got to be vaccinated with the COVID vaccine before even coming to their conference.
I saw that
So,
too.
so I walked. I found another group in the US, based in Illinois, actually.
Oh,
That,
my
that,
or
yeah.
home.
So I'll tell you who the people I've moved to, because I've spoken now both of their conferences. One only about 6 weeks ago, but the International College of Integrative Medicine.
Awesome. I know them.
ICIM, yeah, ICIM, incredible organization, around about 600 physicians and natural health practitioners, totally open-minded, really into doing the very best for their patients, very closely following the Hippocratic Oath. They respect autonomy, they respect beneficence, doing good for their patients, maleficence, the doing no harm, like the principle,
Yeah, first do no
primum non nocere, and of course justice. These are the four bedrock principles of medical ethics that have just been completely pushed aside during the last 5 years. We got to bring them back. And as far as I'm concerned, if a major organization decides not to respect those principles, I'm out of there. And I know that there were dozens and dozens. I don't know even if it was hundreds of people who did what I did. They were just absolutely shocked that the organization got so far in, and still to this day they are, doing the whole long COVID education, but they're never ever separating the harms that may have resulted from exposure to wild infection vis-a-vis the COVID jabs, and that is wrong.
Yeah, and I want to make sure people know how to find you, how to donate. This is Alliance for Natural Health. Is this the best? I think you have two websites, one for the UK and one for the USA.
Yeah, this is the best one for the US. This is our this is anh-usa.org.
And I'm putting that in that link in the comments as well, so that people can donate. And a portion of every sale from my book is being donated, or both books actually, right? Because I have the book and the workbook, are going towards the Alliance for Natural Health. They are. I get chills, honestly, just thinking about all the gifts that you have given this world, this community, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart from everything that you have done for us. Really.
Thank you so much. You'll see that. Join us. You can join and get our newsletter every week. We release week in, week out a newsletter with some really interesting information. You'll see our take action section there. We are some of the most active. In the natural health space, I think we are the most active on the Hill. So we take actions all the time to influence the system in order to support our mission, which is about protecting, promoting natural health, dealing with the largest corporations that are continuously trying to, take us away from that mission and pushing these new technologies, whether it's environmental chemicals, whether it's drugs. So please join us.
Yeah, and you know which one I clicked on, because I'm now live in Georgia, and I've been following this, right? You know, people, I had somebody knock at my door and they wanted to spray pesticides. And I explained to the young man that for every pest he was killing, he was also killing the birds and he was killing humans. And, he's like, I'm not killing anybody. And I said, and you are. And I said, and you need to look and do your research. And people are, again, it's going back to that unconsciousness where people just don't understand the impact of their actions or inactions, right? And so we want to help people modify behaviors and have a reason to modify these behaviors and help the Alliance for Natural Health get the word out. They have an amazing team. Look at this handsome man here, Dr. Robert Verkerk, and looks like, and so I don't know Jonathan yet, and we have Ronald Hoffman, MD, Michael Ames, Sikora, Melanie Eldridge, who I've spoken to. I love Gretchen Dubois. She is a light among lights, right? So you guys, they have a phenomenal team that's here to serve you and serve the world. And so I encourage you, please to connect with them. Start with getting their newsletter. We can give a percent of what we make, right? Consider it like the church.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jodi. It's so generous of you, and as I've been reading your book, I will have it completely finished by the time I interview you, which is coming up as well.
June 4th, I think it is.
What I think is incredible is that you have linked the emotional health of people to, and you give so many solutions. So many solutions. In life, part of the task is to identify the problems that we face correctly. If we misidentify them, we can never find a solution. Mm-hmm. But I really am inspired by the way that you break down in each of the chapters these problems that we face, but every time there's not one issue that you raise that you don't also present a solution alongside it. And that's what we're so missing in society. People just do not have solutions for some of these problems.
So thank you. I lived a life without solutions, and I made it my mission to provide them. And because we are all uniquely different, as we have already spoken about, I know that the importance of providing a multitude of solutions, because if they don't see me, like, they need to have choices and figure it out themselves. If they do see me, I can narrow down almost in a nanosecond exactly what's going on and which solution is the best one for them. And the most important thing I'm going to say right now is the solution that is good, let's say for my friend Chris, because I can put her out, right? So the solution that's good for Chris today, in 6 months from now, may be a different solution, because the body changes every single moment of the day. And that's what people need to understand. And it's always an evolving thing. When I reclaimed my health, I could not have any vegetables because I was allergic to 135 of them. Yeah. But now I have mostly vegetables in my diet and 10% meat. So it's, there's nothing that's ever static. The only thing consistent in life is change, right?
Exactly. Yeah, carnivore diets can be incredible medical diets, but ultimately, one of the reasons that people benefit so much from them is that they are moving down an autoimmune pathway, and the body is losing the ability to discriminate between the huge complexity of chemistries that your body is assaulted with when you eat plant foods. Meats, actually, from a chemical compositional point of view, are much simpler. And so you take that stress off the system, and then if you've got enough going into the system that allows regeneration and self-healing to happen, you can slowly start introducing plant foods again. And again, be aware of which foods you're going to be, able to tolerate, because tolerance varies hugely between different plant groups and between individuals, and that's what health practitioners and nutritional practitioners do for a living. But yeah, there's an enormous amount you can do yourself. We come into this world without a manual, and we've got the most sophisticated thing that we know about on planet Earth is our own bodies. And most people, I've actually discovered this in talks where I will ask, doctors and physicians and scientists a question, which is, please describe to me what life is. And it's remarkable to find that there are many people who really don't know what life is. And yet we deal with life every day. And so it's just a reminder of the fact that there may be, hundreds of definitions of what life is. It's nothing to do with chemistry, because when we die, we still have the same chemicals in our body that we had minutes ago when we were alive. So energy has a lot to do with it, because we know that the bioelectrical systems stop working, whether it's the central nervous system, the heart, or whatever. So yeah, we're kind of often looking down the wrong end of the microscope.
Yeah, so Dr. Patrick Porter, the CEO of BrainTap, was giving a presentation that I was listening to this morning, and he has said this before, and it dovetails really quite nicely to what you're speaking about, so that when someone dies, the minute they die, they're actually, and I forget how much lighter, but they're lighter, they're physically lighter, because the spirit left. And what is life? Life is a frequency. Life is a resonance.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day,
it comes down to energy. Absolutely. Everything comes down to energy in the end. And the problem is that we've been using this cellular, then molecular, then genetic lens to look at life. And, even if you look at the genetic lens, we still have major amounts of disagreement exactly as to what the DNA code is, how gene expression changes, exactly how epigenetics works. We have some of a basic understanding of it, but only to a small degree. Most people don't fully recognize the significance of light, as a form of energy. Every single living cell emits biophotons. There we go. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and when it's pouring rain out, and I did go out this morning in the rain, but this is just one of my lights. I have actually about, I don't know, about 12 different pads that all plug in, because without light, I mean, they demonized the sun, right?
Sure.
And
Crazy.
yeah, and okay, so I'm just going to say this one thing, and then we probably need to close up because we're over time, but I would talk, we'll just do this again. But anyway, so for those of you who are listening to this, and if you burn in the sun, please look at your intake. So I will tell you that, meaning the intake of your food and your water, does it have chemicals in it? Because the sun can burn the skin when there's a chemical reaction between the chemicals in your body, right, and the sun. Now, I will tell you that as a child, up until the time I took a medication in my teens, I never burned. I never burned once. As soon as I started taking medications, not only did I burn, but I blistered. Now, since I've been off of medications for 10 plus years, I don't use sunscreen. If you do need one, by the way, I know one that you can eat if you need it. That's how safe it is. But if you need we don't really want to wear a sunscreen, people. We want the sun. But if you are taking chemicals in your body, you'll need a bridge for yourself during that time. And I'm not giving medical advice, so you'd still have to see a practitioner. So we have some says, Christopher Silva says, I find it fascinating that we live in a human body we know little about, or rather looking at it incorrectly to really know anything about it. Yeah. So
That's what drives me. And unfortunately, that we've got people in very high places in academic institutions and in government who give the impression that we have this total, complete understanding of the human body. And just imagine if you ask them, well, where do you think we're going to be in 1,000 years' time? Will humans in 1,000 years' time look back at scientists who are around in the year 2025 and say, wow, that was the time when we knew everything that we needed to know about humanity and what life was? Of course, that's not the case. We
right.
are babes in the wood, and we'll carry on learning. And that's why we've got to be looking at what are the disciplines in science that will start to unfold the next chapter of our understanding. And I think, you know, Reverend Jodi, you and I are probably going to agree on this, that it's going to be quantum biology, it's going to be energy. That is the next major field, and it applies to everything. You know, when we look at the way molecules work, or enzymes bind to receptors, we already know that process isn't driven by random processes. There is a specific attraction between compounds and their intention to find that receptor site. The base pairs in our genetic code are attracted to one another through energy. We know that. It's been published in 2009. So, you know, the fact that CT pair up and GA pair up, you know, G never pairs up with T. It's not a random process driven by energy. So yeah, as we start to learn that you know, more about how these energetic processes operate, we will begin to unfold another chapter. And who is to say there's not another 10 or 1,000 or even an infinite number of chapters beyond that?
Yeah, you know, it just occurred to me that, you know, I have a Dr. Gary Montemayor scheduled for, I think, 2 more shows. He's the one who is explaining scientifically quantum energy.
Amazing.
It looks like, I believe the 2 of you need to be on the show together, and I'll just give you each a turn and I'll just be quiet, you know, because it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to meeting
I'll just sit over here and let you 2 talk, right?
Might as well throw Bruce Lipton into the middle of it all.
Well, and he's friends with Bruce and with Jodi
Okay.
Suson.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. There he's
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
great.
and I haven't had the blessing to meet either one of them, but I've read both. I've read Bruce Lipton's books, you know, of biology belief. Whew.
Yeah.
If you haven't read that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I want to say thank you. Thank you, you know, Dr. Rob, for coming onto this show, for blessing us with all your wisdom, for, you know, the work that you do. And I mean, so it's more than just fighting for our rights and natural health. Oh yeah, sorry, you know, I'm not shutting up today. So see, one can wage war on anything. And a man I am friends with, his name is Jarrett. I want to say his last name is Brooks. He's also a quantum energy healer. And we talked about a suit of armor, and then we reframed it to suit of armoire.
Oh, look at that. Fantastic. Yeah, there we go.
And so the reason I bring this up is because how you do this is you lead with love.
Totally.
You do this. There's no anger. I mean, I'm sure there's an upset, but what you're also doing is raising the vibration of the universe, all in synchronicity. And it's really pretty amazing to witness.
Yeah, that's what drives it. And you know, we don't have Jonathan, my partner in crime, as one of the top lawyers in the US. And you know, he's not only driven by nature, but he's also driven by the US Constitution. And he says, but it was divinely inspired. I mean, the more, and he's written books and books about it, and he's won all these cases based on constitutional rights. But once you have a set of principles,
Oh, this man.
it just becomes the basis on which you make decisions, and actually things become clearer, not less clear.
Is it this man right here,
Yes,
Jonathan?
it is indeed. Yeah,
I can
Jonathan is
see his goodness. I can feel his heart. He's amazing.
so yeah, just check him out. You'll find lots of his writings out there and his books. A book he wrote in 2021 in the middle of COVID was called The Authoritarians, and it's a really important history of America to understand, where the thinking came from, and this contest that we see between, a socialistic system that enslaves people versus a system that respects the rights of the individual, the principle of liberty. These are really fundamental principles, all of which are at risk unless we turn the tide on this authoritarian creep that's occurring around the world.
So let me go on record for something then. May I?
Please.
2027. The tides will be completely turned. What we see today is the pharmaceutical industry will not exist by 2027. I don't know when, let me just ask when. They're saying by August of 2027. It will be completely turned around. And it's not just my channel, by the way. I actually need to credit, I confirmed his channel. I didn't get the month until just now. Dr. J.R. Heiss, he's a TCM doctor out of Illinois. And he got that download at the age of 4. He is now 44.
Incredible. Well, there are a lot of people pushing against it. We have now a whole department in Health and Human Services headed by Bobby Kennedy that is pushing against it. So that is the pendulum swinging, and with that kind of intention behind it, these objectives are not imaginary at all, and it's phenomenal when people like you can reach out, into that space-time environment and get feedback, because it helps us to stay on course with what we're doing now.
Oh yeah, it's changing. It is changing. Back in 2020, when COVID first started, and I was walking into Whole Foods, it was it's right by Lake Barrington, Illinois. I don't remember the exact. It was Deer Park, Illinois. I walked in. I saw this hand sanitizer, I think it was Purell or something, at the front door, and the download came like that the chemical companies were going to be out of business.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're going away. Look, when we know that we can use hydrogen water, when we know we can use lemon essential oil, when we know we can use oregano and clove, when we understand the power of our plants, no one's going to want it.
Exactly.
I mean, why get some?
Information. That's so that's what we're really trying to open the door on now. There's a reason why free speech is the First Amendment. So we're pushing very hard on that.
All right. Well, I am so grateful. Thank you. We're actually really going to end the show this time. But if you hold on for a minute, I would like to have you back on another date. Let's pick one, and let's keep this conversation going. All right.
Thank you, Reverend Jodi. Fantastic to be on your program.
Likewise. Thank you, Dr. Rob. So happy to have you. So, and that.